When I started getting into DMT, where I was having encounters with light beings.
What did you think the light beings were?
With acid and mushrooms, you don't typically, at least I never had visuals. With the DMT, this was like full on, like you're seeing a whole world just crack open in front of you.
What would they tell you?
These three beings come in my room and another one came in and was dragging my body. And they told me, if you don't stop doing heroin, this is you.
As society continues to get crazier and crazier, one theory I have to explain some of the craziness is that everybody is on drugs. Everybody is on prescription drugs, psychiatric drugs, the legalization of marijuana, and specifically hallucinogenic drugs. Hallucinogenic drug use has increased dramatically in recent years. LSD use is up something like 400% over the last 20 or so years. Psychedelics more broadly, up significantly. And for all of my sins and degeneracy that I've engaged in my whole life, drugs has never really been one of them. So I decided to bring on an expert on drug use and how to get off of drug use. That would be Josh Zatkoff. Josh.
How you doing?
Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Before we started, I said, Josh, how would you like me to introduce you? And you said, I don't know, Josh.
Yeah.
You now have really turned your life around.
Yeah.
You are an evangelist. But you've had a rough past.
Mm-hmm.
Homelessness, jail time, and drugs.
Correct, yeah.
So the reason I want to find out about all this is not so that I can scold people and say, just say no, like Nancy Reagan. I guess I do kind of want to do that. But I want to know more about it. I want to know why people are so interested in drugs, and specifically in these psychedelic drugs.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting topic, and I think it's because people are all in a search for something. You know, we're all searching for the more to life. I think for me, personally, it started off with curiosity. You know, for me, I remember being like 11, 12 and seeing the comedy movies and, you know, they're smoking weed in there and stuff like that. And so you see that and you're like, I want to try that. It's being glorified. The cool people are doing it. And so for me, it started out just like that. And then once I was a curious child. So once I had encountered somebody that had access to that, it was natural for me to want to try it. And so when I did, it gave me a new taste of reality, like a different reality. You know, it felt like it was the missing piece to my life that you know what I'm saying? Because when I was younger, I started feeling that desolation in my mind, or that, you know, that weight of oppression kind of coming on me. And I didn't even know what it was. It was, you know what I mean? I started to feel depressed and stuff before
You started to feel depressed after you started using drugs, or before you started using
No, before.
Yeah.
And I didn't have like the language for it. I didn't know that I was depressed. I just thought I was feeling, you know, sad or something. But it seemed to take like a darker turn as far as like, I don't feel like all my other friends are dealing with this, you know. That's kind of how it started to feel. And
So it didn't just feel like, 13-year-olds are angsty, and are you saying now, in hindsight even, what I was dealing with was in fact heavier, or just that it felt heavier?
Looking back, I know it was heavier, you know, because so like when as a young kid, even like 7, 8, I would like scratch my face till it bled. Like I had anger issues. Like I had all these self-harm, you know, like that stuff was there as a little 7, 8-year-old. You know, and my mom has little, you know, writings or whatever diaries she kept for me. And one of her entries was saying how, you know, she came home from the babysitters and I was chasing with a butcher knife. You know, like at 7, 8 years old. And I think she's like, you were just being silly. But just, yeah, you know, and so it's like, but that stuff looking back was like, it was there. It was blatantly in front of everybody's face, but like, how do you deal with that? I definitely didn't know it wasn't normal though, because I'm not living with other kids, you know what I mean? And it's not like I had a bad childhood. I had great parents, great family, all that.
Were your parents married?
Yeah, yeah.
And so what do you attribute that to? Was it mental illness? Was it a spiritual condition? Was it an accident?
No, it's definitely mental illness, but I believe mental illness, a lot of it is spiritual. That's my take on it. I think a lot of it's spiritual. And so when I look, because it's always producing something negative. For the most part, people that deal with mental illnesses, whatever variety of it, it always, produces something negative. It's never something, good or, like that does something good for the world. It causes chaos and stuff. And so when I smoked weed for the first time, it was like everything fit together and was like, oh, this is what I needed. And so it was just instant, like right off the bat, it was like, oh, this is what I want to do in my life. And I tried to, that's kind of, that was my first, it was a romance. It was, it was like love at first sight or something, and so I became obsessed with marijuana because it made me feel like I was a better version of myself.
Why marijuana instead of booze? Because I like tobacco and I like alcohol. And thankfully, I haven't, for all my problems, that has not been one. I've never really felt addicted to those kinds of things. But I like them.
Right.
I like a cigar and I like a drink, whereas I don't really like the old devil's lettuce, which I've smoked on occasion. And that never really grabbed me, but it did grab you.
Yeah. No, I think it might just be a personal preference. I didn't like alcohol because I didn't like how it tasted. I think the first time I drank, I was maybe like 13, and I remember I had a group of friends, and it was just it tasted nasty. And then I was like, man, smoking, it's quick. It's like within a couple seconds. But drinking, I'm like, I'm sitting here and drink all this stuff and to feel, because I just wanted to feel drunk.
Yeah.
And so I didn't like it because I never liked feeling like sloppy and like so obvious. Weed made me feel like it was a more nonchalant kind of thing. So I think that's why it was just a personal preference.
So far we've covered all the drugs that I have any familiarity with. When I was a kid, I told you, drugs didn't really attract me at all. With one exception, I was curious about LSD and mushrooms, and people now today are always talking about ayahuasca and all these. The psychedelics interested me, and I never did them. I kind of had a little bit of a fear of them because I was told when you do it, your brain is never the same. It kind of rewires you, and I thought, well, I don't know, I kind of rely on my brain, so I don't know that I want to rewire it. But I was curious about it. I said, what could I see if I took these drugs? So when did you graduate to those kinds of drugs?
So when I got into high school, about 14, I saw the movie The Doors, Jim Morrison with Val Kilmer. And man, I never felt like I related to somebody so much. Like when I was watching him, I felt like I was watching the person I wanted to be or something in that movie. So much of me connected with it. And so he was doing peyote and acid and stuff in the movie. And so at some point in high school, I had a friend have acid. And I did it, and it wasn't like, I didn't take enough, I don't think. Nothing really happened, but I felt kind of just different, but nothing really happened. And then a few months later, like probably the next year, I think, it was like my sophomore year of high school, I had mushrooms. And so the mushrooms, I was sitting in somebody's car, and it was like weed all over again. It was just a whole new reality. And I spent like 3 hours, back in the day, it was like the CD players had the little pictures on them, and like you could pop them in and out. And for 3 hours, I was just sitting there staring at that. Like that, like it just got me entrenched into this new reality. And I'm like, look up, I'm with my friend, and it's like, dude, we've been doing this for 4 hours, having the time of our life. It was just, it was just so intense. I had this experience of just feeling like there was, like the universe was alive. Like I felt connected to the things that were around me. I felt like I was connected to life in a different way. And I started thinking different. I got more, I guess, deep in my thought. I started just kind of becoming more philosophical and in my approach to just how I was viewing things and my perspective. And so it was like,
how is it different in that I go through my daily life, I feel that the world is teeming with life. I mean, I feel connected. All the things you're describing, I feel that in my ordinary day-to-day life. You describe the sense of going deeper or thinking more philosophically. And I don't have experience of the mushrooms, but I think I read a book and I think more philosophically, or I look at a work of art and what was different about all of that on the mushrooms?
I don't know if I could say it was more of it slowed everything down and made me more like it was like, oh, look at this water. Like, and you notice every little bubble. It just like made you so appreciative of the moment. It pulled me into the moment in such a way where I appreciated things I never appreciated before. And then there was this feeling of just joy. Like I couldn't stop laughing. I had, I mean, I was laughing the whole time and I had the time of my life. And so it just, at that point, I was hooked. Like, it was like, I can't wait to ever do this again. And then what happened was I actually went to a rehab, not like a month after that. I went away for a year in a rehab. And in that rehab, I got into Buddhism. And so when I started to read about Buddhism and Taoism and stuff, and started to meditate, I started to notice that the ideology behind it was lining up with the ideology I was kind of having on the mushrooms. So it was like this, there was this dynamic between them that started to kind of cross.
Many such cases, by the way. My friends who have gotten into shrooms and acid and stuff, they have gone down that sort of Buddhist, Taoist, Eastern mystical route. So you end up in the rehab. Was it a family member or something sent you there, or?
Yeah, my parents, because my mom, she, on her side of the family, there was a lot of addiction. My dad's side of the family had alcoholism. So they were just being good parents, they see their kid falling down that hole, so they were just trying to help,
Right.
And but the thing is I was 15, and when you're 15, you think you know everything, you don't want help. In my mind, I'm like, I'm just smoking weed, I tried an ecstasy pill or something, a couple of things, but in my mind, everyone else I was with was doing the same stuff, so I didn't think it was absurd or anything. And so when I went to the rehab, I had gotten into Buddhism. And while I was there, I think because I didn't have family and because I'm just with a bunch of kids from all over the country that I don't know, the place got shut down for child abuse. So it's like I'm with, wacko people leading it. And I think I felt like I only had myself. It was like the first time in my life, it was like, you're on your own kind of thing. That's how it felt, was like all you have is yourself to rely on. And so Buddhism kind of, it taught me, I guess, how to kind of be strong within myself, and it taught me the power of like what was within me, and it taught, you know what I mean? And so I just took to it, and I got addicted to it, because I was on ADHD medicine at the time, and so that, gives you hyper focus and all that, and so that's all. There was nothing else to do. I'm stuck in this place for a year, and so that's all I did. I started meditating and reading books, and yeah.
And you found that there was a commonality in the perspective on the world. Did you find there was a common effect? Did you get the same sort of high by meditating in this Buddhist manner?
I wouldn't say to that extreme or to that extent, but I started meditating and I started having moments where I would get something that would remind me of it. And I'll give you an example. Like, there would be moments where I'd feel like I would start kind of vibrating or something, or I would just feel like this divine connection that reminded me of when I was on the mushrooms. So it was like these moments of it, but the difference was like I felt like I had to work for it. So with the mushrooms, it's like you take this and you stay there, you rest there. But with the Buddhism, it was like you're doing this stuff, I'm meditating, I'm to get to that place and then try to stay there.
So what you're describing sounds generally pleasant. I don't know that it sounds like an ultimate triumph or joy or victory, but at least it sounds kind of pleasant. You're just vibing, feeling with the universe, man. And so, how's it go wrong?
Oh man, well, so that's a long story. We're talking like a decade of journey to find that out. So after the rehab, when I came home, I got in my first legal trouble. So when I got in my first legal trouble, I was 16. I got put on probation. I wouldn't stop smoking weed. I'm actually friends with my probation officer to this day, on social media and stuff. And so she was really cool towards me, but I kept smoking weed. And I told her, I said, I'm not gonna stop. I said, if you're gonna lock me up, you're gonna lock me up. And so I was going in and out of juvie. Like, I would fail my urine test, and then I'd go for like 30 days, 2 weeks, whatever. And then eventually I said, you know what, I gotta find something else. And so one day I was on house arrest with my friend, and he asked me, he had a painkiller. And he asked me if I wanted to try it with him. Me and him had never done it together before, so I did the painkiller. And it was like the same thing again. It was like this feeling I never had, the best feeling I ever had in my life. Me and him looked at each other and we're like, do you feel that? And so that began basically within 6 months I was shooting up heroin. So,
Whoa.
So at that point, psychedelics were always there as like a here and there thing. They were something I just enjoyed. But then at one point, I guess probably maybe 10 years into it, I'm trying to like do the math in my head of like time frames. Around 1920, psychedelics were something that I did when I needed heroin to function basically, right? So like the heroin that was my addiction. But the psychedelics at that point, they started off in high school as like a party thing. It's like you go to the party, you have fun, you laugh, but I knew the spiritual element was there. And so once I got to the place of like liking Buddhism and stuff like that, I started taking them to kind of jump into the spiritual aspect of it. So I would take them, and so I had nothing but good experiences. You know, like I had nothing but positive things happening as far as I would have this like new profound wisdom would hit me. I'd have this understanding of being connected, being one, all of us loving each other. It was like, that's the secret to life, love each other, you know.
Was there any wisdom, perhaps that is the wisdom, but is there anything you remember now looking back on it yes, here was a bit of wisdom that I gleaned on one of these trips that I wouldn't have known otherwise? Is there anything you can point to and say, that piece of wisdom? Or no, was it just kind of a feeling of wisdom?
No, I think it was just more of just a different mindset. It was like just a different level of consciousness that when I was in that place, everything made sense. So it's like, it was almost, and it's like, the funny thing about hallucinogens is like, a lot of the stuff you forget. It's like you're here and then it like leaves you. And that's why people keep, I need to go do another retreat. Because it's like,
I know it was great and I know I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I just don't remember anything I learned.
Yeah, and you take some of it with you. You'll take like one or two things and then the rest is forgotten. And so that's what it was. It was like, like an example was like, I always would walk away with this feeling of like, I need to be a better person. Like it would crush my ego and crush my pride in the moments you'd get, you know what I mean? And I'd be like, man, I'm really a bad son. I'm really, you know what I mean? Like I'm a bad brother, you know what I'm saying? Like I would have these real like, I guess, reflective moments. And so because of that, I'm thinking this must be a good thing because it's bringing, I guess, sobriety to my thinking in a way, you know what I mean? It's making me see things different, whereas other drugs, they feed that selfishness. It's like that heroin, you don't care about anybody. But on psychedelics, I'd be like, oh, I need to be more mindful of other people, stuff like that.
I've been around people who have been on coke, and they're the most annoying people on planet Earth. They never shut up. They're talking about the most boring things ever. For some reason, they always are trying to get you to do coke. I've been offered cocaine so many times in my life, and I've never done it. It's not something that's interested me. But I thought, isn't this expensive? Like, why are you trying to peddle your expensive drug on me? Yeah. Why are you talking about your work assignment from last Thursday? Nobody cares. It's just like babbling. Anyway, I could see that distinction between a drug that kind of pulls you out of yourself, much as Buddhism does. Buddhism is essentially a denial of the self, and a drug that pulls you really into yourself. But so what you're describing, other than your life completely falling apart while you're doing it, other than that little detail, it sounds like the hallucinogens are fine.
Yeah, it seemed that way, and so I thought they were the answer. And so my whole life goal was I just need to trip. Like I wanted a perma trip. That was my goal. You hear these horror stories. There's this story that goes around. Everyone says, I know this guy who thought he was a cup of orange juice. Yeah, right. Like everyone's heard this story, and somehow it's like their friend that they heard it from. Right?
He thinks he's a banana and he peels himself off.
Yeah, and all this stuff. And I honestly at the time I was jealous of that. Like not that outcome, but the outcome of like I could stay in this place because I liked who I was in that state, and so. It was always like, I just need to go trip one more time, collect the data, and then remember it and stay there. And so the other thing was like, there was positive things when I started getting into DMT, where I was having encounters with light beings. You know what I mean? They're talking to me, they're telling me you need to stop doing heroin or you're gonna die. They're guiding me in a positive way. But at the same time, I'm getting more into the occult. I'm playing with Ouija boards, thinking it's a game. I'm egging on like the Ouija board move, and I'm telling it, show yourself. I'm egging it on. I'm thinking it's all a joke. I think all this stuff is a joke.
So you're playing with the Ouija board.
Uh-huh.
The Ouija board, the idea is it's not your hands moving the thing around, but it's demons, basically. It's moving the...
Right.
Did it work?
So it's funny because my first encounter with the Ouija board was my mom used to have them as a prop for Halloween. No one played with it. It was just when Halloween parties, and she'd just have the Ouija board there, and it would just be a prop, right? And I think one of the first times I remember using it, and it wasn't like I did this like hundreds of times, it was maybe a handful of times, 70 times. And so the first time it worked was I was at a friend's house. It was, I think, like 8th grade summer or something, 8th grade summer. And there was a group of us at this girl's house. And so it was a group, like maybe 5 or 6 was playing it. And it starts to move. Now, everyone's first reaction is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Everyone's, no, I swear, no, I promise, no. Everyone's denying. I know it's not me. The thing starts to move. People start getting freaked out. And me again, I'm challenging this stuff. I think it's a joke.
Yeah.
Because even though I think like, oh, it really is moving on its own at this point. Now, but I'm like asking it stupid questions, like, oh, if you're real, show your face, and stuff like that. And so it starts to move and people will start getting freaked out. So it was like me, and I think it was like 2 or 3 other girls and another guy. They said, and they start saying, so one of them said, you have to ask it if you can leave. Like, I heard, you can't just, or I'll leave the door open. You have to ask if you're allowed to leave. So they said, can I leave? And it goes, yes. Can I leave? Yes. And so next thing I know, it's just me and this one girl. And she says, can I leave? And it says, no. So she goes to try, and she's like, can I leave? No. And it goes, no, no. And she just freaked out, and she just ran off. And I was sitting there and just laughing and
So it wasn't you moving it.
Mm-mm.
And so you could say, well, maybe it's this girl just wants to, spend more time with you.
Yeah.
She said, okay, I'm going to move it to say no.
Yeah.
But she gets very freaked out, and then she leaves.
No, it was genuine fear. Like, she was like, oh my gosh, I said no, no. She just like freaked out and she left. So that was like the first time I saw something come from it. And then years later, I played it. Back when I was getting really into the DMT, I had one and I was with one of my friends. And this guy was, he was a very stoic kind of guy. He wasn't a type of guy to like get scared easily. Like me and him used to, do all types of crazy stuff together. He wasn't the type of guy to for one, to play into it, and 2, to get scared about stuff like this. It's just me and him, and we start playing, and like I said, I lived on that battlefield, and so we start asking it, things, and it starts moving. I didn't even need to ask, I knew it wasn't him. He knew it wasn't me. It starts moving. So we're asking him multiple questions, and I start asking him like, well, when am I gonna die? And it gives me a number, and it says from an overdose. It says 37 from an overdose. He asked it, and it gave him a number, and it gave him it said, I think, like heart failure or something, heart attack or something. To this day, that friend is scared. He called me literally like last year. He said he freaked out. And this is 2012, 2013. To this day, he's still afraid of that. He still thinks that's going to happen.
Yeah, of course. How old are you?
I'm 30. Yeah.
Are you scared?
No, because I think the blood broke the curse. So, but I think that it would have happened. I think that was the intention. I think that was the plan for my life, maybe, But he still thinks that, like, he called me actually like a year ago or something. He said, dude, I only have a year left, if that, like, he thinks it's going to happen.
Right, because demons can't read your mind. Demons are not God. Demons are not omniscient or anything like that. But they are pretty good observers of behavior. And so, based on the behavior that you were exhibiting for a long time, it may have been a perfectly reasonable inference to say, oh yeah, you'll die at 37 from a drug overdose.
Yeah, 100%.
So why are you doing, because people tell me this, they say, oh yeah, I'd play with Ouija boards and crystals and weird astrology stuff, but it was all just kind of silly games. And I think, when I want to play a silly game, I play Monopoly. Why, what is it about, what drew you to the Ouija board and all the occult stuff?
I think just us as humans, we're drawn to the taboo. I think it's part of our nature. We like that mystery. That's why people like horror movies and stuff. And it's like,
And your inhibitions are already a little bit weakened because you're doing all this other crazy.
Yeah, I liked that
Right.
like kind of that, I liked the demonic type of stuff. I was drawn to the dark stuff, not, not in the sense of, hey, devil with pitchfork and horns, but the stuff that made people uncomfortable. I wanted to go into the water that everyone else was like, I don't know, it's a little crazy.
The secret.
Yeah. And so it was just something I did with like friends. I'd play the Ouija board. I started doing psychics. I went into all that because Buddhism is already kind of branched. I would say those are branches of that. It's like that whole world kind of comes together. It's the same thinking. And so I started getting more into the occult. And so what was crazy is when I was about 2012, I was doing a lot of psychedelics. I was doing a lot of heroin. I was in probably the worst place I had ever, one of the darkest places in my life. And so I had this moment of like, I'm having encounters with light beings. Why am I not happy? Why am I still stuck? I can't stop doing heroin. I want to kill myself, and I'm thinking I'm enlightened. I would have a trip, and for a week I'd be the most enlightened. I think I was Gandhi. For the next week, I'm Gandhi, everybody. And then a week later, I want to kill myself. And so I'm starting to connect these dots. Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why am I having these great experiences, but I can't ever bring back the fruit, or what I thought was fruit? I can't ever bring it back to my life. And I can't find the power to overcome any of my obstacles.
What did you think the light beings were? Did you think it was a figment of your imagination, just a chemical product of the drugs, or did you think they were angels or something?
So with acid and mushrooms, you don't typically, at least I never had visuals where like, oh, I'm seeing this thing just pop up. It's more like the walls will melt. Everything's a lot more vibrant. But you could see something and it starts to look like something else. I had a time where like my dog turned green and his tongue was longer. Stuff like that, right? Like, but like, like, oh, this is reality.
Still a dog.
Yeah. Like, it's like I knew it was reality. With the DMT, this was like full on, like you're seeing a whole world just crack open in front of you. It's like going to Mars or something, right? Like right now, this room, just turns into, another realm, right? And it's like, so I knew I was hallucinating, but I also knew 100% this stuff is real. Whatever is in my room right now, these things are real, and they would be light beings. So they're a human shape, but they are like, they were colors. One was purple, one was orange, one was red. It's like a flaming light, but in a human shape body, right? So it's like a silhouette. And then the thing about them is that they would always speak peace. Like, we're here to help you. We're, calm down, relax. We have your back. And the thing that was interesting, and I didn't pick it up at the time, but looking back, it literally was like, when you're swimming in the ocean and you feel like that there's something maybe under you. It's like you're enjoying the waves, it's fun, but you kind of like, oh, there might be a shark. That's how it felt. It's like, I kind of don't trust you guys, but I don't have a reason not to. You look pretty. You're giving me good information.
You're clothed as an angel of light, you might say.
Yeah. And so that's kind of where it was at. But it just never.
And they gave you advice in the sense that calm down, it's okay. What would they tell you?
Well, so like the one DMT experience I had these three beings come in my room. I freaked out. I started to try to get up off the bed. But there was a bigger one. Like, so if I was laying down, it was like his legs were 10 feet tall. So the other ones I see in front of me dancing around, just swirling. This one was 10 feet tall legs. I couldn't even see the top of the being, but his hands started going over me. And if you've seen Reiki, they go like this. Like they do. He was doing Reiki hand movements over me, and he was telling me telepathically, relax, we're here to help you, right? And then a few minutes later, my door opened up by itself, and another one came in and it was dragging my body. So I'm in my body, I'm watching this. My body gets dragged in the room, and they told me, if you don't stop doing heroin, this is you. And because I used to get high in my bathroom. And so I knew they were saying, like, you're gonna overdose in this bathroom if you don't stop. And so that's what I mean. Like, they would tell me, like, you need to be a better person.
So what is that? Seems to me there's 4 options. Mm-hmm. It could be your subconscious. You knew, even as you're doing a bunch of dope, you know that this is bad for you and it's going to kill you. Mm-hmm. So it's your subconscious telling you that, like in a dream, say. Or they're demons. They're clothed as angels of light, as it says in the Bible. Or they're angels. Mm-hmm. Or they're just some weird chemical hallucination, totally random, totally unaccounted for, totally meaningless. Which to me seems like the most ridiculous possibility of all. So which of the three is it?
So I think the interesting thing is that if you talk to anybody that did psychedelics, I think everybody would agree they're all real. It's like everybody.
It's not just your subconscious.
It's not your imagination, your subconscious. I think there's times people think like your subconscious can create stuff that isn't really there. But those experiences are 100%. It's another dimension. The veil is removed, and I think that's what gets manipulated because of our ignorance. And so, and I'll give you an example. The first time I did the mushrooms, I started to climb up a radio tower, and then I got about 20 feet up, and I saw, oh, what am I doing? I shouldn't be climbing a tower right now. I started to climb down. That inflicted a thought of fear, where I started, for some reason, because I was in the woods, I started thinking about the Headless Horseman. And I'm like, oh, the Headless Horseman's gonna get me. I started to hear horses come, right? So that was a example of me thinking something.
And then it kind of...
But I knew, oh, I'm just tripping.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this isn't real right now. I went back in the car and I was fine.
Because you hear that expression a lot. You're like, oh man, that guy's tripping over there.
Yeah.
Obviously where it comes from is you literally were tripping and you were imagining something that wasn't there.
Yeah, and I was imagining it, and I knew I was.
But this was different than what was going on in your room.
Way different.
But so then my question is, it sounds like they're demons.
Yeah.
But they're saying, hey, don't kill yourself, get off the heroin, which seems like good advice. So then it seems like they're angels.
Right. So
what is it?
That's the deception in it. And so I think Romans 6 talks about, it says you're either a slave to sin or to righteousness. It says, look at the fruit of what's coming from this. And so I think that a lot of times we have to look like, what is the fruit that is coming from this? Like the fruit that was coming from this was not good in any sense for me.
Even when they say get off the heroin, that's not good. Well, I guess because it didn't work.
Because there was no power there. So it's kind of like, and I always use this illustration of, if I'm trying to kidnap somebody, I'm not gonna say, hey, I'm here to kill you, kid, like, come in the car. It's like, here's some candy. Right. Hey, I wanna get you down there, here's $100. So they don't, if you look at like the state of Satan being the god of this world, in a fallen state, fallen angels having, secret knowledge, and you know what I mean?
Principalities and powers.
Yeah, and all this stuff, they're not dumb. And so they can give you stuff that looks good,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess our imagination is just limited. We think, oh, those stupid little devils, we're so much smarter than them.
Yeah.
But, no, they're pure intelligence. They're probably more intelligent than we are in many ways. So you're in the room, you're surrounded by demons, basically. And you're saying they're real. You're aware of it's not just something you're imagining. And you see this vision of yourself dying from heroin. And okay, then you wake up from the trip. And then what?
So I wouldn't, but this is before I have encountered God, all that. This is when I'm around 20 years old, I think, around 2012, when this happened. I see this, and I think that they are angels at the time. They were light, they seemed loving, they seemed to have my interests at heart. So I did think they were angels at the time. And afterwards, I was like rocked that will really mess up your view of life for a while. Like I didn't even know how to look at life the same anymore after that. And I was, but then it's like, oh, I gotta do it again. I gotta meet them again, whatever it takes, right? Like, and
give me some more poison so I can meet those angels again.
Yeah, but here's what happened. So about a week or two after that, I'm at my house. I'm sitting there. I'm depressed because I was going through a breakup, and I'm not gonna get into the whole story, but long story short, I'm sitting there one night. My best friend had died the year before in a car accident on his way to meet me. So I felt bad about that. I was dealing with guilt about that. My life is falling apart in front of my face. I just had a baby that's probably a year and a half old at the time. And it was like everything was so hopeless. And I'm sitting here spinning my wheels, trying to like connect to these spirit realm and go to the psychic, getting Reiki done, doing all the stuff that I could think of, everything I could think of. And I remember one night I just sat there and I had kind of like surpassed, depression or anger or any emotion. I don't know if it's apathy or what.
So you were just despairing at that point.
Yeah.
You weren't even angry. You're just so there's no hope.
It was just like that Pink Floyd song, "Comfortably Numb." It's like it just nothing, just and so I basically said, yeah, I think I'm done. I was sitting on my back porch, I was drinking, and I said, I'm done. I said, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. I walked in my house and I got a microphone cord, and then I walked back outside and I lived on a battlefield.
Oh, you mean I'm done? Like I'm done?
Yeah, I was dead serious. Like I'm just done. I don't want to be here anymore.
Huh.
And because you have to think that this, I mean, for years this was always in the background, but you don't ever think you'll actually do it. It's kind of like I want to, but I wouldn't actually go through with that. I was cutting myself. I hated life. I hated myself, and I didn't even know why. I just felt like I was just chained to something that I didn't want to be a part of. And it's like you're sitting in the passenger seat of your car, and someone else is driving. That's how it felt for the last, or the previous few years or whatever. And so I said, I'm done. And so I lived on a battlefield, like a actual Civil War battlefield, right? And so that added a whole another element to this like spooky stuff going on. But
all
anyways,
nature is but art unknown to thee.
yeah, yeah. And there's the the fences. It's like Civil War they were tied up. So where I lived, it was like a cliff. It was my house, and it was a cliff, and then it was like there was a little small stream. And then it was like a little creek that broke off, and it was like a 20-foot something drop, like 22 feet drop, a cliff, and then like 2 feet of water. And so I tied it to the Civil War post, and I tied it around my neck, and I walked to the end. I said, I'm done, and I just stepped off. And the second that I felt the cord, it tightened, it pulled, and it caught. As soon as it caught me, I was like, oh no, what'd you do? Like this was a mistake. What are you thinking? But it was too late. I knew it. I really did it. And so next thing I know, it feels like in a dream state. You know when you're in a dream and you're aware, like like a lucid dream. It felt like that, but in the dream, I had no memory of what I did. So in the dream, I'm just wondering, like, why can't I breathe? Why am I cold? Why do I feel stuck? I didn't know, had no idea what was going on. And so in the dream, all of a sudden, in that state, I see this little light out of the corner of my eye start coming towards me. It wasn't a big light. It was just like a little light that grabbed your attention from this black void. It started coming closer to me. And then next thing I know, I felt something loose my neck, still not knowing what it was. Just, I can breathe again in this dream. And I grabbed and I got up, and next thing I know, I'm popping my head up out the water. And it all hits me, like, what just happened? So I'm sitting there like, I'm crawling up this hill. I'm soaking wet. It's the middle of like December, middle of winter time. I'm freezing cold. I'm shivering. I'm crying because I realized what I just did. You know what I mean? I go in my house. I have bruises all over my neck. And my neck's all purple. And I was a mess. But the thing that happened that night is that I knew that there was something out there after that. Like something saved me. And the craziest part was that I said, it came untied from the fence.
It couldn't just be the cord snapped or something?
It snapped, right? That's what I'm thinking. I go back out there, it's still tied to the fence. So it was a microphone cord. It stretched maybe double the length, I guess, because of the what it was. Right. It stretched, whatever it was, I knew something saved me.
So it didn't snap, it didn't unfurl?
No. So it just stretched and was attached to both ends. But even then, I was unconscious. I couldn't.
Had it snapped where it was tied around your neck?
No, it was just loosed. Like I'm unconscious, just knowing that I couldn't breathe. I didn't know there was something on my neck. I was unconscious. I went out. I saw a light coming towards me, and when it got like maybe like 10 feet away from me, I just felt it loose. And then I popped up, and so then it hit me. At that moment, I'm here for a reason. Something cares about me, and something is aware of me. And I have no idea what or why, but now I got to figure out what it is, And I wish I could say like, it's God, and everything changed at that moment. It didn't. It got way darker. It got way worse, because there was no language. There was no understanding of what it was. It was just, I'll never do that again. That was really, that was about all that I had at that time. And so
it was, I'll never do that again, but I'll do all the other stuff I've been doing.
Yeah, basically, but not wanting to, and that's the worst thing about it, drugs. It's like, it starts out fun, and then you're a slave to it, and you can't stop, and it's the most miserable existence because you got, everyone's telling you, just stop. Look at what it's doing here. And you can't.
Well, you make this great point, which you're not the first to say it, which is that you're either a slave to sin or a slave to righteousness. And the way that people talk about freedom and liberty today, even on the right, certainly on the left, but even on the right, is really shallow and incoherent, because they'll say is freedom is just being able to do as much heroin as you want. That's freedom, baby. You know, if you want to do heroin, you have the right to go do whatever you want. And as you have just attested, no, you become a slave to it, and you become a slave to it very, very quickly. And it doesn't, that's not an expression of freedom. That robs you of your freedom. You know, you're going to be a slave to sin or righteousness. You're going to be a slave to vice or virtue. And so the question is, then what is freedom? Freedom is obviously when you accept the constraints of virtue and goodness. And Christ says, you know, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Follow me, do what I say, but don't worry. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. And the yoke and the burden of heroin and all the light demons, that's not light. That's not light at all.
Yeah.
So, but you keep going into it because you say, okay, I'm not going to kill myself anymore, but I'm still addicted to drugs. I still have been practicing. I've been cultivating these habits for 20 years or whatever, 15 years. And so you're not just going to switch that off overnight, or it would be very difficult to do that.
Yeah.
So then what happens?
So basically I go down this road for, you know, years basically. And I'll go to basically the next couple of years, I'm getting worse in my heroin addiction. It's becoming, you know, it started out the first few years, it was kind of like the drugs were always there. I had the jobs that would somewhat support it. So it was like comfortable. Yeah. Then it got real uncomfortable. Then it got miserable, you know, where I'm always sick. My whole day is like chasing that. And so when I was 23, 2014, I was going to school for massage therapy. I don't know how, that was a miracle in itself that I don't know how I graduated the school, but I get through massage therapy school somehow. And 3 days before I get my graduation certificate, I already had graduated, but I'm waiting for the certificate or whatever. I basically get hit with a distribution of heroin. There was some girl that I was, you know, kind of friends with. I had middleman something to her. She overdosed. I call the police or the ambulance to resuscitate her. And she, you know, she ends up surviving, but she tells on me, so I get charged with a distribution of heroin. At that point, I had, you know, done a little 2 weeks, 30 days in jail. Well, this was a big, serious offense, right? They're trying to tell me she's dead and all this stuff, telling me I'm looking at a murder charge, all this crazy stuff. I knew they were just saying that, but anyways, I end up getting the distribution. So 2015, I get sentenced to 18 months in jail. And so in that point, I really life smacked me in the mouth and really sat me down to really, because I have a kid at this point. You know, there was no more running. And so at that point, I got sat down and I was like, man, I need to change my life. It was the first time in my life that I really wanted to change. Or not that I really wanted to change, that I was really serious about change. Like, all right, I'll really do what I need to do. And so in the jail, I ran into actually an old friend, and he had been there for like 5 years at that point, and he was talking about Jesus to me. I'm looking at him, I'm like, something's different about him, because I knew him from the streets, you know. I'm like, something is different about the guy. I'm not gonna lie.
That unspeakable joy that dwells within him, you know.
Something
unfathomable.
But he's talking to me about Jesus. I'm mad at him. I get mad at him. I snapped on him one night. I said, dude, stop talking to me about this Jesus. I said, I don't want to hear it anymore. And then I left to another jail. But for some reason, this was another, like, one of those moments in life where I have no idea why. I don't even know what happened. Just at some point, I started to think Jesus was my God. I didn't even really believe in him. I just was like, you know what? I tried all the other gods. Maybe Jesus will be my God. You know?
Heroin didn't work. The Buddha thing didn't work. You know what I love about that is everybody expects these kinds of stories that would be in a Hallmark movie or something, and you know, and this is the climax of Act 2. The way you're telling it, it's like, and then I just realized, no, he's God. I just figured out, that was it.
But
it's so obvious, you know.
But it was weird because there was nothing. I don't even think I believed that. I think it was like, I'll try this one next. I didn't believe that he was God.
So it was an experiment.
Yeah, it was an experiment.
Okay.
I just would start talking about Jesus and mention the Bible, but I didn't seek him or anything. I just would, and it was crazy because when I got out, I remember I was like making music and I'm like, I was listening to like some of my old music and I would shout out Jesus. I had no relationship with him whatsoever. Did not know him at all, but I'd be like, yeah, Jesus, whatever, right? And then the next line, talk about something crazy probably, right? But so what happened though is after that, this is when everything started to really change and boil down to it. And so I get out in 2016. I'm trying to get my life together. I'm trying to stay off heroin, but I'm still going to the bars. I'm still, I'm getting blackout drunk. And when you're a heroin addict, that's really good. You're real proud of yourself. It's like, all I'm doing is drinking. And so I'm getting my prescription for my Xanax. I'm doing good, but I'm blacking out all the time. And but I'm going to church. That was the one thing that changed. I started going to church like 2 or 3 times a month. And nothing happened though, but I would go and it was just, for me, it was just the one day that I could be someone else. It was like, I hated to have to be who I was. And I just wanted to like go and pretend to be somebody else or like, just feel like I could get away from my life or something.
So there's this common thread from the beginning of the story through this point, which is you're trying to escape an identity that you don't like and trying to escape time and space, right? This is something that I've heard from friends of mine who have been addicted to drugs and booze and stuff. And frankly, that I feel if I have a drink at the bar after work, which is, it's kind of like time slows down. I'm so stressed, I'm on this tight schedule. But now time, all the constraints of that work, all that stuff, that's gone for right now. And so you're finding that in all these different ways. And one does find this at church. Church on Sunday you go, and if the liturgy is proper, then it is different. It's supposed to be different from the world. You're in the world a lot of the time, and then the church is a kingdom that is not of this world.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah, and that's what it was. It just was like something cool to do that, I did it by myself. And so I met this girl that would take me and so I started doing that. But again, nothing changed in my life as far as like I wasn't doing heroin and that was about it. But I'm doing everything else I was doing, what I mean? I'm still sleeping around, I'm still drinking, I'm still doing this and that. And I started getting more into music and I was like, all right, I'm gonna do music. That's what I'm gonna pursue in life. And so I started doing that. And then I'm building my life back up. I finally get my license back after like not having it for a few years. I get a restricted license, I get a car. And 2 days after I get the car, I wreck into a fire truck, get a DUI. I had it for 2 days, and a fire truck pulled in front of me. I hit it. There was no damage, but the cops come. My friend's with me. He's passed out in the passenger seat, so they arrest both of us. I get DUI. I get out, and I start trying to get back up on my feet. I get move into a basement. I was living with my dad at the time, and my parents were split up at this time. They split when I was like 17. So I'm living with my dad at the time. And I'm trying to get my life together. I have a job. I'm doing landscaping. I'm working to get on my feet. And so I have this stuff that I'm building. And then all of a sudden it was like, and here's the thing about God is that you don't see him working a lot of times in the moment. It's when you look back. And so I didn't notice any of this. But all of a sudden I started feeling bad about, I was prescribed Suboxone, which is like to get people off heroin and stuff, and I would shoot it up, which you're not supposed to do, but when you're a heroin addict, like if something's water soluble, you want to do it that way because it's just better, right? And so I started feeling guilty about that. So again, for me, that's like, why do I feel bad about this?
Why is my conscience speaking to me?
Yeah, it was weird. And then I remember I read, because mind you, I'm going to church still. I started reading the Bible one night because I would read the Bible. People would be like, yeah, just read the Bible. And so I'd be like flustered, want to get high. And I'd open the Bible and read like 2 lines and be like, this doesn't help. And I'd chuck it across the, like I was, I would try. And so I'm calling on God, but nothing was happening. Like, I'm like, nothing's working. And so, and I always tell that to people because a lot of times we think God is like, hey, I'm ready for you. Come on, come do this for me now.
Well, that's what the New Age people say. I'm going to manifest this reality. So I'm in charge.
Yeah.
Whatever I want, I'm going to get it if I just think hard enough or whatever. And it's like, that's not You're not God. That's not how that works.
That's why I always tell them, create a tree right now. You know, that's real manifesting. Make a tree grow. You know, so it's like this. So one night I read the Bible. I get home from church and I open the Bible and I started reading 1 Samuel. And I don't know what happened, but I got pulled into this story like it was the best thing that I had ever read. And I'm reading this stuff like, what? Like, you know, it's
Do you
war.
remember which part?
It was a whole thing about the Ark of the Covenant and Eli's sons, you know, tampering with the sacrifices, and God's like, I'm taking the covenant, and you know what I'm saying, or the Ark of the Covenant, and it was like, yo, this is crazy, you know, this is a crazy story. This is, and what was wild is it was true. When I read it, I said, this is real, and I said, this is so cool, and then that was about it. I kept going with my life. Well, I get a new car. This is 3 weeks after I wrecked the other car. I get a new car. My dad takes me to get a car, pick this car up. And I'm sitting there, my dad even says, he says, I have a bad feeling about this. Because I don't even really technically have my restricted license at that time, because I had the DUI. I'm out on bond for a DUI. And I get the car, I have it for 20 minutes. I'm literally on my way home. I took tags off my dad's van, put it on, I'm like, I'm going straight home to get tags and all that. So I'm driving it super illegally, don't have insurance, nothing. Buy this car, and I'm 20 minutes down the road, and I'm going to switch lanes. I'm at a light to turn left. There's a light to go straight, and I look over my shoulder twice. I'm sober and everything. There's no cars coming, and I go to pull out, and all of a sudden this car comes over the hill going like 60 miles an hour, and just crushes my car. Like, I mean, folds it in half, carries me into the middle of the intersection, and then somehow the car turned back straight. And I said, oh no, I said, I'm out of here. And I started trying to drive away. But then I said, oh, my insurer, my name's in the title is crushed in the glove box. So I said, I think I should pull over. So I pulled over. I get arrested for that. Driving unsuspended. They charge, everything's my fault because I wasn't licensed.
Right.
It was all on me. So that happened. I get out. My mom feels bad. She comes to the scene. I'm upset. I'm like, dude, I'm trying my best to get ahead in life. I'm trying not to do heroin. I'm doing everything's just, so my life is literally just crumbling around me. And it was like everywhere I turned, disaster, mayhem. And so I'm like, and I get home, and then a week later I get kicked out of my basement for having like someone over or whatever, and the landlord kicks me out. And then they had something hidden in the lease where it was like, they don't even have to give me a notice. And I guess I signed that probably, unknowingly. Yeah. So it was like, yeah, you got 3 days and you're out. So now I'm homeless. So this is like June 2016 or 2017. And so I had been out for like a year, now I'm homeless. Everything just kind of hit the fan. At this point, it perfectly worked out where everybody had kind of turned their back on me as far as like, friends that were kind of there, all those relationships started falling apart. My parents, they still love me, they were still there for me, but it was like,
we're not buying any more cars. The cars are out.
You're done, yeah, like you're on your own. And I respect that, it was due time. So all that is kind of there. And now I'm just there in the woods, and I'm going into this really like dark place of just being comfortably numb again, of just like I'm working at Fridays and so here, where everything shifted was about a month into this. I was working at Fridays one night, and this lady came up to me and she said, God said you need to see him. And I stopped going to church like 3 months prior.
This was a lady from church that came up to you?
No, a lady that I worked with. She came up to me, she said, God said that you need to see him. And I was like, yeah, I know. I said, how do I get in touch with him?
How do I make a meeting?
Yeah, let's do this, and I'm ready. So, but it's hit me, something, I was like, because at this point, I believe there's a God. I know I know the spiritual world is 100% real. There's not a shadow in my mind that is real. So I already am aware. I'm like, that was really weird.
But there's an Italian expression. Fra il dire ed il fare c'è il mezzo del mare. Between saying and doing is a whole wide ocean. So you can say it. You can say, I know intellectually this is true, but okay, what are you going to do?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was at. I was like, all right, I'll talk to him, go to him, but this has been a year where I'm crying out to him. Nothing's really happened yet. And so I go to the AA meeting. I go to an AA meeting down the street, and I leave and go into the chapel, and I'm going into the chapel, and I said, all right, God, I'm here. What do you want? And I sit down. Nothing happens. I read the Bible. I just open it, and I read this page. Don't think anything of it, leave. A week later, I come back. I do the exact same thing. I don't even know why, though. I'm going to the AA meeting because I'm trying to get my life together, but something pulls me into the chapel. Hey, God, I'm here again. What do you want? open the Bible, and I get halfway reading through it, and I realize, oh, this was the same exact verse I read the last time I was here, Psalm 18. And so I'm like, what? That's crazy. So now, all of a sudden, something's got my attention. And so now, let's fast forward maybe like a week. Now everything starts rapidly moving, right? So a week later, I was with some guys in the woods. They smoked this stuff called K2. It started off as like an incense, and they would sell it at the gas stations. Well, it leveled up, and now it's like a whole other thing. It's very, very like powerful.
It's like the drug is incense?
It started off, it was like an incense, and you would smoke it, and it would resemble weed,
Yeah.
But I never liked it because it just didn't feel right, It was like something about it wasn't right, and so basically, I would see these guys bug out on it, like they would be slumped over, be acting crazy, and I was like, there is no way that this does that, and so
I'm gonna test that for myself.
yeah,
Is that right?
I said, yeah, and that's really what it was, because I'm in my mind, I said, I do real drugs, there's no way this does that. And so they told me, they said, just take one hit. It's like, this stuff's strong. And I said, no, I hit it like 3 times. And next thing I know, as soon as I like pass it to someone, at this point, I've overdosed on heroin like 4 or 5 times. So I know what it feels like to like, there's a split second of just your body registering whatever you just did was too much for us. And so next thing I know is I just hear them saying, oh, he's going out, and I just feel myself falling to the ground, and I start to crawl. And then next thing I know, I'm in a dream world, right? And in this dream world, I'm walking down a path. There's demons on my left and demons on my right. And they're basically laughing at me. They're different sizes. They have these little robes. They have these big grins. But I'm like not really paying attention to them because I'm following another one that had its back to me. And so we're walking down this hall, and we get to this big door. And so right before we get to the door, it says, one more step, you're almost there. And it turned around, and when it looked at me, it was an ugly demon. And I said, hell no. And I turned around, and when I turned around, I woke up in a pool of sweat. And so that was like another hook where it just like, what the heck was that? That was not normal.
What do they look like?
They look like little like gremlins, like almost like the from Lord of the Rings, the little guy that chases the ring. I think I don't even think I ever watched that movie for real, but I know the little guy.
You meant the real thing. So.
Yeah, they look kind of like that. The ones I've seen, they're just ugly. They're deformed, like almost like little, like almost like you see in horror movies. Like that's what they look like. And they're some of them will be like 3 feet tall, some of them will be like 6 feet tall. Like they were different sizes, and they're just ugly, but they all had these big smiles. It's like these mocking. They're like these mocking spirits or something, and so that happened. And a week after that, I go to see my grandma and with my dad, and so I go to see her, and I go out one night, and I come home, and I went to the bar. I was drinking and stuff, and I come back, and I'm sleeping with my uncle. It was like 2 couches and a long bed or whatever connected. So I'm sleeping in the bed with him basically. And I'm about to fall asleep. And I start hearing the TV. I'm watching American Pickers. I'm halfway asleep, so I'm awake. And I'll never forget their voices change into demonic voices. So their voices turn into demon voices. And they start talking about me. And I said, I don't know if, have you ever heard of like sleep paralysis?
Yeah, I had it once, certainly, and maybe twice.
Yeah.
And it's very scary.
Right.
Because it sounds like you hear demons.
Yeah.
And maybe you do.
And you lose control of your body.
Yeah, you can't move, so you're just there hearing. I forget what, I just heard like a weird demon voice, and I was awake, but I couldn't move my body. I thought, the hell, what is this? And then, 30 seconds later, it was over, and I could move again.
Yeah.
I had to look. I said, what was that? And it's sleep paralysis.
It's freaky. And it's funny, actually, to backtrack real quick. When that first started happening, because I had it a lot, it first started happening when I started doing Buddhism. The first time I started having sleep paralysis was when I started getting deep into Buddhism. I started having it all the time. And it freaked me out, but it also intrigued me. So it was like this double-edged thing where it scared me, but then when it wouldn't happen, I'd kind of be like, no, I want to see what happens if I stay in there and like don't fight it. But anyways, that starts happening. So I'm in sleep paralysis. It feels like something's getting in my body. Like I'm like this. It's like something's trying to get in my body. And the TV says, his name's Josh. He's from Virginia. We need to destroy him. They're talking about me. I'm hearing it, and I'm feeling something get in my body. Next thing I know, I'm like finding myself on the floor, And I guess I was like screaming, crying or something. My dad said, like I woke up the whole house making these moans or whatever. They come downstairs. I'm like, oh, I'm good. And I lay back down. Well, when I lay back down, all of a sudden I'm having something tell me to kill my uncle. In my head, something's telling me kill your uncle. And there was no reason to think that or want to do that. So I'm sitting here thinking like, what? Why? Where's this thought coming from? And while I'm saying no, I'm also simultaneously getting up to do it. So it's like I'm on autopilot, getting up, and I find myself standing over my uncle, and something's just telling me like, just crush his head, like just squeeze his head, like and I started going like this over his head, and then his eyes popped up open, and he's like, and it freaked him out obviously, and he went in the other room, and he went and slept somewhere else. So that was number 2. That was like wake up number 2 as far as like the demonic realm, right? So now I'm like, dude, demons are really real. Like, there's no doubt about it, and I'm getting kind of freaked out.
Yeah.
And so I come home, and there's another couple weeks pass, and so basically I come to this place where I want to go to a rehab. And so I'm in a hotel room one night, and I said, I'm gonna get high one more time. At this point, I think I was clean off heroin for like 3 months, but I was shooting up like crack and all those types of stuff. And I didn't even like it. I was just doing whatever was around. As long as it wasn't heroin, I would do it. And so.
And you think you're going to rehab, so all right, one more for the road.
Yeah. And that's
so stupid, but everybody thinks that way. It doesn't matter what it is. You're like, one more for the road. Yeah, tomorrow, that's when I'll clean up.
Yeah, and same thing with getting out of jail. You know that the overdose statistics you're 129 times more likely to overdose within 2 weeks of getting out of jail or like a program. And that's like crazy, times. But that's what it was. It was 3 months. I was like, I'm gonna get high one more time. And I remember I was sitting in the bathroom, and I mean, at this point, I was pretty broken. Like I was pretty. What am I gonna do? And I started talking to God. I said, Lord, I said. I said the sinner prayer. I said I went to church. I literally called on you to help me every time I went to go buy drugs. I begged you to help me and stop me. I said, what else do you want from me? I said, this is all I know. I'm sitting here looking at these drugs. I hate these drugs. This is all I know. What else do you expect from me? I said, forgive me. And I started saying the Lord's Prayer while I was tying my arm and doing all this stuff. I started saying, Our Father who art in heaven, while I was doing it. And I said, forgive me, this is it. That's all I know. And so I subconsciously knew I was going to overdose because I knew I was doing too much. It wasn't intentional, but I was just like, you know what? I hope it kind of happens, but I'm not trying to make it happen. But if it does, whatever. And so
that's a really. I think I get what you're talking about, but I couldn't articulate that. You're saying it's not intentional, but I knew it was too much, and I was doing it anyway. But it wasn't quite intentional, but like it wasn't not intentional either.
Yeah, it was just hopelessness. It's just like whatever happens will be, like, kind of thing. Like, just
even though you know what's going to happen. He's like, well, whatever, it's out of my hands, even though I know exactly what's going to happen.
I did, but I also, it's funny because you get this pride when you get an addiction. There's this pride associated with it where you build up tolerances.
Yeah.
And like I had overdosed, like I said, like 4 or 5 times. And so you build up this ego with it where you're like, I'll be good. I came back the last time. I'm good. So you get this pride with it. And so that's what it was. It was like, I think I'm overdosed. I'll be all right though. Yeah. That's what I thought. So I did it, and I instantly, again, my body goes into fight mode. Like I stand up, I said, run. Like, just keep your body moving, because I knew I felt that feeling of like that comes before an overdose. It's a split second of knowing, and I ran out the door, and next thing I know, I'm in an ambulance. And so I'm waking up in an ambulance, like, oh no, again. And because now I'm thinking, my first thought is, I had drugs, or I had a needle, cops. And so I wake up, they revive me, and the cop says, now you're going to jail. He said, do you want to go to the hospital? I said, no. He said, all right.
Then you go to the other place.
Yeah. And that was the moment that really everything changed. I go to jail. I'm in a suicide watch. So they take basically the jail experience and make it worse. It's like they take all your clothes, you don't get the regular food. And I'm sitting in there, and I basically was like, you know what? Going through hell on earth. I mean, and I remember I looked over on my cell wall and it said cold hell on the wall. I'm on the phone, my mom's, crying. She's like, you almost died again. everything's hit me. It was like for the first time in my life, all my choices smacked me in the face in a different way. Like I always knew I was just screwing up. But this time it was like God put everything just in a pile right in front of me. And I'm in this room going through literally withdrawals from multiple things and just having to sit there and look at it and knowing there's nothing, like you can't go anywhere for 5 days. And all I said was, God have mercy, God have mercy. Our Father who art in heaven. I said the Lord's Prayer over and over. That's all I could do. And I said, if you help me, I said, I'll be a good boy. That's all I want. I said, I just want to be a good boy. I said, Lord, I won't go to the bar anymore. I don't even want a girlfriend. I said, I just want to be good. Like that was how I was done. And I get out and I go to they transfer me to the little pod. And I sit there for like 3 days and I remember, because in a jail pod, people do nothing. It's like people just sit there and talk about terrible things, play cards or watch TV. That's all that they're doing. It's like the most miserable way to spend your time, you know? And I said—
George Bernard Shaw said that hell is the place where you have nothing to do all day but amuse yourself. So you just, I guess we'll play cards now. I guess we'll talk about crime now. I don't do whatever.
Yeah, that's what it was. And I sat there and I said, I'm not doing this again. Because I had just did the 18 months, like 11 months prior. Yeah. I said, oh no. I said, I'm not. And I know in my mind, I brought back another felony. I'm already on probation. I have 8 years over my head. I said, I'm not doing this again. In my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm probably gonna be here like 5 years. Yeah. I said, I'm done. They're gonna toast me. I'm done. My life is over. I said, well, I'm not sitting in this pod. I'm gonna join a program, something. Yeah. So there was this program called the Mind Dorm, it stands for Men in a New Direction. And it's in the Prince William County Jail that I don't know where else it is, but and so I hear about this. It's a faith-based program in the jail, and so I go to it, and I remember like everyone's like, dude, don't go there. They got rules. You can't cuss there. You have to wake up early, like all this stuff, right? And I'm like, I don't care. I'm not sitting here with you guys, you know. So I'm going.
Are you not there? Okay, cool. Then I'm going.
So I walk in, and the funny thing is, there was a friend of mine that was there. And I was supposed to move in with him like 2 weeks later, and he disappeared. He got locked up. And so I walk and I'm assigned to his bunk. I'm like, I guess we moved in together one way or another, you know? And so I was there, and after a week, I almost left because it was like, you had to wake up at 6. In jail, you don't want to be awake all day. You know what I mean? Like you want to
sleep as late as you can.
And so all this is happening, and I'm about to leave. But then one day, it was probably the second week, I'm thinking about leaving. Something spoke to me in my heart again. It was like this thought of, why don't you just try? It was just a thought that wasn't my thought, but it was so loud, like kind of like it silenced everything. I said, why don't you just try for once? Like, and I kind of thought about it, and I was like, you know what? Where else am I gonna go? I said, when these speakers come in, I might as well listen. If I gotta read the Bible at this time of the day, I might as well read it.
What else are you gonna do?
Exactly. And so I started doing that, and it was like a week went by. Next thing I knew, I wanted to read the Bible for fun. So when it was free time and everyone was watching TV, I'd be reading the Bible. And then I would start praying. Mind you, I'm going through withdrawals still, because Suboxone withdrawals take like a month. I'm not sleeping. I think I'm doing, if I'm lucky, 3 years in prison. And I'm starting to be happier than I ever had been in my life. So it's just like this contradiction going on, but I'm feeling more alive every day. All of a sudden, people would come up to me and they'd be like, dude, what happened to you? You're different. One guy came up to me and he said, dude, every time I'm having a bad day, he said, when I look at you, he said, I feel hope. Because I just started having this joy. It was, and I didn't know what was happening to me. I'd look at myself in the mirror and be like, what's happening to you? Because I just felt like I was changing, and I didn't connect the dots still. I still didn't connect the dots because there was no moment. There was like, oh, burning bush. It was just, I would read the word, I'd pray, and all of a sudden I would like be in conversations and they'd be talking about drugs, and I'd be like, this is a stupid conversation. I'd go to read my Bible. And that was like the first thing I started noticing. About 2 weeks after that, I would start praying. I'd be like in prayer, worshiping Jesus, whatever. And it would just feel like a love bomb would fall on me of like, it reminded me of how I felt when I was on mushrooms, except it was 100 times more pure. Like that, like uncontrollable laughter and just joy I felt on mushrooms. It made that look like creek water compared to Dasani or something. You know what I mean? It was like, I thought that was joy, and I would have to do mushrooms to have that joy, but that wasn't even real joy. That was like artificial joy. I was laughing. I thought it was joy, but I was getting like covered in this just love. And I mean, it freaked me out because I literally felt like I was high almost. Like it was like I was high on life, and like I'd be laughing. I had joy. All I wanted to do was read my Bible and pray, and it just took off. Really, like I was there for 2 months in this cocoon of Jesus, and that's all I wanted to do. It was like everything in my life made sense. I started knowing, like, oh, you have a purpose. Just everything came together. And so basically what happened though is that my lawyer was like, you're looking at like a year. Or I mean, he said, you're gonna stay in here, your low end is 18 months. You're probably looking at like two years or so. Like I was 18 months to 3 years or something was the guidelines.
Yeah.
So he said, get comfortable. And I didn't care.
I am
Jesus.
comfortable.
I really was. And I remember my mom came and she said, you're not gonna get a bond. And I said, praise God. I said, I love, like I said, Mom, I met Jesus, he's real, and so I was like dead serious in this, like I was fully in love. I met him, like it was like every time I would call on his name, I would just feel it was, and I'm not gonna lie, like I used it like a drug. Like while I was there, that first like month, I really would I'd be like, oh, I need to pray to Jesus so I could feel this joy, right? And that's how it was. And so I was just getting this change like radically. And I remember one night I prayed and I said, Lord, I said, if you get me out of here, I said, I'll pray for every person I see. I said, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I said, I'm 100% in. And I said, you don't owe me anything. Like I made this bed, I get it, but that'd be cool, right? I said, it'd be cool, Lord, if you get me a Christian halfway house so I can bond out, so I can look good for court at least. I'll still do the time, but I'll look better in their eyes. So like a week later, my lawyer comes in. He's like, hey, I got a ticket out of here for you. I got this Christian halfway house. He said, you get a bed-to-bed transfer. It's a 6-month program. If you complete it, the judge will probably work with you. And so I did that. And in that time, it was like my relationship with God just took a whole new, it just kept growing. And I remember knowing like, if I don't stick to this with everything I have, I'm gonna go back to what I was doing. And so I was in another state, I didn't tell anyone I was home. And so and then a year later I go to court and the judge basically was like, look, there's no point of locking up again. My PO loved me, so she's writing good reviews. It's like, I'm in a halfway house, like I have my job, everything is, and so that's the.
So you come to the end of that. And is that it? Is that happily ever after? You don't do drugs, you don't, commit crimes or anything. I guess your crimes were all drug related, so it's not like you were going and burglarizing people's houses or anything. But is that it? That's the end of the story?
No. That's so okay. So I'm in this like evangelism mode, right? So I go, because I have that addictive personality, I'm all in for this Jesus stuff.
Well, I'll tell you too, I don't have a particularly addictive personality. When I was an atheist for 10 years, I reverted in my early 20s. And after a kind of slow process of first believing that God exists and then, that the Bible's real, Christ is who he says he is. And when it clicked though, I had that same feeling of, what do I do now? I just need to tell everybody. I need to, whatever I am doing, doesn't matter. I need to just go, and I think this happens to all converts and reverts, or many of them. A friend of mine converted, had this very numinous experience where he said, I was filled with the Holy Spirit. I said, describe it for me. He's like, I can't describe it for you, buddy, but I'll tell you this, when it happened to me, I was just totally bowled over, and my first prayer was, Lord, please don't make me a Jesus freak. He said, please don't. But you just feel, and it's funny in that you got the zeal of a convert, so all you want to do is go out and talk about it. But you are probably rather immature in your faith at this point because it's so new. Mm-hmm. And so in a way, you're the best person to go evangelize, but in a way, you're like the worst person to go evangelize because you just haven't been doing it. It's not in your muscle memory exactly yet. And so, and if you have an addictive personality, I'm sure it's that times 10.
Yeah. No, that's basically what it was. I was addicted to reading my Bible. I was addicted to praying and worshiping, and I was addicted to telling people about Jesus. That's exactly what it was. And so that went on though for a while. That was my life to the point where, honestly, there was a point where that first year, I worked as little as possible at a labor finders, at a temp agency, making like $50 a day, just enough to pay rent for my halfway house, and I would spend all my free time going and praying for people and evangelizing. Like, yeah, I treated it like a job. And so I'd spend my whole day praying, and then I'd go pray for people, come home, pray, go out. And I did that for a while. And then so basically what happened was I got married a little over a year after getting saved. The girl that was taking me to church ended up being my wife. You know? So,
it's convenient.
Yeah. So that like invited another level of like just life responsibility. And so then I had to kind of change how I was moving. And then I'd say a year after that, it was like I started reassessing everything. And basically what I mean by that is I started to not feel that like Jesus high every time I prayed.
Yeah.
I started to not get those, I always joke around and say the best intercessors are a new born again believer, because it's like when I first got saved, every prayer was getting answered like boom, boom, boom. And it was nice. And then it got to the point where it was like I had to wait and no's or whatever.
Yeah, I explained that to myself because there was, when I reverted in those early years, it's weird. It's really weird how palpable it all is, how just real it is all the time. And now looking back on it, these things still happen. A lot, everything is rich in meaning, and the world is teeming in miracles. But I look back on it and I think, oh, I guess I just really needed that. I sometimes think it's God saying, "Hey, you stupid idiot, why don't you get it?" And then after a certain amount of time, you don't need that as much anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the process of maturing, right? It's like, yeah, and I think that's what it was like I was used to God being so on me, kind of, and then it started to feel a lot more distant. It started to feel a lot more like faith, and so I started to basically just really get real analytical. I got out of that childlike faith of just believing and just being, and I started to watch a lot of like atheists talk about stuff. I was just questioning, like, because it was like basically I got to this point where I was like, all right, I know Jesus is real. I said, how can I feel like I'm starting to get arrogant, like, because I'm telling people, I'm out here preaching Jesus. I'm telling people they need to repent of sins. I'm being that guy, and I believe it. I believe it for me, but I'm saying, how do I know it's only for me? What if there was other ways for other people? Like, how, like, am I arrogant?
The idea of the technical term is indifferentism. What if all religions are pretty much the same man, and you worship this part of the elephant and I worship this, whatever, that's
right.
Which is a very popular idea. It's extremely wrong, but it is a very popular idea. So you're exploring this and you're saying, well, maybe what I'm doing is just one thing among many that we could do.
Yeah, and it was more of like, Jesus is the truth, the way, the life. But what if there's more to what's been presented? Like, what if there's more to this than just what I've been finding in church? Do you mean more in that other religions are true, or do you mean more in that Christianity is about more than this? Christianity is about more than this.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was kind of like maybe there's more to this than what we think. And I started looking into more like early church and started just research everything. I put my faith up on the altar kind of, and just was like just trying to. It was like almost like I was trying to crush my faith, in an honest way of like, look, God, this is where I'm at. And then I started to get, I guess, bitter. That's what really started to happen. Was I started to get bitter because I was praying for people and I was doing, God's work, I thought, and I started to get prideful and feel like, well, look, God, I'm doing this. And it wasn't like, what, you're not doing something for me. It was, why aren't you helping them? Like, that's kind of how I started to feel, because I come from addiction. So I was trying to help other addicts. I'm trying to help. And it was like, I was trying to lead them to Jesus, and it wasn't working the way I thought it should. And so I started getting prideful. I started thinking I was God's, boss almost. And that's kind of, because I'm like, well, I've been doing this for 2 years. I don't know what's really coming of it. My life has changed, but I said I want to see other people's lives change too, or I don't feel, it's like I don't feel like I could really be confident in this if it's not producing fruit for other people. And so I found this in my research one day. I found this article about this mystic group that would basically took mushrooms as a form of basically connecting to God. Like, it was normal, and that's what the Bible referred to as manna. So it was this rabbit hole I was.
They said that manna was
mushrooms.
Was shrooms. Wow.
They said it popped up every morning, like.
Yeah, when I read that passage about the man, it doesn't exactly resemble shrooms to me, but that's very funny that they're saying this because with mushrooms in particular, but all of it, DMT, acid, all the psychedelic stuff, there is this weird culture where if you see a heroin addict on the street, you say, oh, there's a junkie, there's another bum, hope he doesn't kill himself.
Mm-hmm.
But then someone says, oh, I do shrooms all the time. You say, wow, you must be so spiritual. Wow. And it's just like, you're both poisoning yourselves. You know?
That is the aesthetic of it though, right?
Yeah.
It does have that, yeah. No, for me, it was like, I still had these memories of the positive from it. So I still, at that point, I hadn't connected the dots to this was part of the problem. In my mind, I was the problem because I was on drugs. So now I'm starting to think that seed is planted.
Right. That was a prefiguring of your true enlightenment, which is actually in this relationship with your Savior. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it basically just started, and I didn't do anything with it for a while. It started to kind of just brew under the surface. And I said, you know what, Josh? I said, maybe because you were on heroin and all this other stuff, what if now that you're clean, you haven't done hard drugs in a few years, maybe now you could take mushrooms. It's natural. I'm not talking about acid. I'm talking about mushrooms because they're natural. And now you could probably connect with Jesus in a better way. You know, this relationship isn't as supernatural as it was in the beginning.
Yeah, you're losing your tolerance is growing, let's say.
Yeah.
You're not feeling that high. Uh-huh.
Yep. And so I said, maybe mushrooms will do the trick. And not only for that, but also maybe I can get some answers for other people because I'm encountering this question all the time about people doing psychedelics and seeing it be a thing.
Yep.
I said, you know, God, my heart is to like I put my heart before God of like, look, like this is where I'm at. I said, I kind of feel like doing it. And you know, I said, worst case scenario, I find out it's not good. And you know, I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about it is that, you know, and I say this as humble as possible. Like when I say I was in it, I mean like I really was sold out. I was living right. I wasn't like a Christian that was dabbling in sin and the world and going to church. I mean, I literally my life was dedicated to this. Like that's all I thought about. That's all I did. And you know, like I didn't have a life. That was my life. And so like, and so it wasn't like, oh, I was already slipping away or something. And so basically, months pass. And so one night I go to my friend's house and we're gonna make music. And while you know, he's loading up the beat and everything. And this was a friend of mine that it was like the one of like two friends that I had, that the old friends that I didn't completely cut off.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, you know, it was more just like I would make music with them. I still loved them. So it's like I'd keep my distance but show up. And so anyways, he dumps out his backpack of chocolate mushrooms all over right over the bed, right in front of me. And he basically was like, here, you know what I mean? Here, try one. You know what I mean? And now the thoughts of what I was thinking the last few months pop up. And so I said, you know what, Josh? I said, I'm tired of internally, I'm like, you know what? I'm tired of there being fear with this. I just want to face this. I don't like the fear that, like, there's this fear of I shouldn't do this. And I didn't like that, you know? Like, I said, you know, I don't like fear. I'm going to confront this. I'm going to take it. I said, it's now or never. I'm not going to sit here and think about it anymore. I was tired of processing it in my mind. I just wanted to try it. And I said, you know.
People get so sick of the anxiety and the hemming and hawing and the moral conscience telling you no, that you think, well, here's one way I can shut up that moral conscience. I'm just going to do it. Yeah. And then I won't have that anxiety of anticipation anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably what it was. It was like, you know what, if you're not going to do it tonight, it's just going to bother you. So I did it. Yeah. And I ate it was a, you know, eighth of mushrooms. And just for context, like that was the normal dose that I would take. That was like a normal like go-to dose. It's definitely on the higher end as far as like when you're looking at microdosing and stuff, it's a lot lower than that. But I had taken much larger doses too. I had taken, you know, double
of everything.
Yeah. And so to me, it was like, this is kind of mild, right? That's how I'm thinking. And so I take it and it starts off good. The first 20 minutes, I'm just getting in my vibe and, you know, and just listening to the music and it's all good vibes and good thoughts and I'm happy and it's gonna be good. And then at one point my friend says, hey, these guys want to go to the bar. Do you want to come? I said, no. I said, I just ate. I don't want to go to the bar. And so he said, well, I'm going to go. You can stay here if you want. That's fine. Is that cool? I said, all right, I guess. Okay. I'm stuck here now, you know, kind of thing. And so he leaves. And this stuff, it takes like probably 30 minutes to kick in. So in the meantime, you start kind of feeling your stomach will start to turn. There's like this almost anxiety kind of thing. Like you feel it kind of starting to creep up on you. And so I already had feel that. So I said, oh, we're about to go into this. And so my friend, he walks out the door. The second he walked out the door, it was like that feeling of sleep paralysis, the feeling of like demons and evil walks in the room. It was like this transfer. Like he left, and it was the first thing I noticed was if I feel like I just got set up unknowingly. I feel like my friend just set me up, and he was used as a vessel and had no idea, completely not in his mind knowing what he was doing. But I just got set up here, like
Which you did.
100%.
Yeah.
And that was so clear. You know what I mean? Like I was like, wow, I just got set up. and so he walks out. And evil just walks in. Mind you, I have had demonic encounters as a Christian at this point, just based off doing God's work and having demons come and attack me and stuff.
Yeah.
I had cast out demons and all that kind of stuff. So I know this presence.
Yeah.
I'm still like so 100% sober-minded. Like I'm 100% in my rational mind. I feel it tangibly come in the room. I said, oh, I know that presence. And so I said, oh no, this isn't good. And so, but I'm like, all right, I know how mushrooms work. I'm gonna stay positive, keep my mind right. This, if I feed into this, it's gonna get worse. I started ignoring it. I said, I'm good. And I go into the bathroom and I'm talking, I'm cheering, I'm giving myself a pep talk in the mirror. And I said, Josh, I said, you took mushrooms. I said, it's all right, you're gonna be okay. I said, you can't die. And the second I said, you can't die, I heard a voice speak in my heart, the same way I always have heard God speak to me. Cross-check everything. It says, who says I can't take your life whenever I want? Who says like, and it wasn't in a way of like anger. It was a checking of my pride. Like, who says I just can't stop your heart whenever I want? Like, what do you mean you can't die? I could just do it now, right? Like, for no reason. You could just drop, right? So it was like, oh, I could die. Like this could be it. And so then I started being like, oh wow, this isn't good. I started feeling like, all right, I need to start repenting. So I started praying, and it was like as soon as I started to pray and started to ask God to help me, I felt like I just was getting just like a dark cloud was just coming around me. I could tangibly feel it. I could feel it like closing in on me. And I'm like, but I'm still in this like state of like, it's gonna be okay, you're good. And I'm like, you know what, Jesus, forgive me. You know how we think like,
Yeah.
oh, I messed up, oh Lord, forgive me, and we're good.
Yeah.
So it's like forgiveness doesn't equate to consequence. So it's like
Right.
the consequences were still there, and then I realized, oh no, I opened this door.
Right.
I know better. I'm not a baby. I'm a young child, and God, I knew better. And so now it's all hitting me like, oh, what'd you do? Like and you just opened this door. And you're gonna be stuck in this place because now I know I already have my spiritual eyes open, sober-minded, in the natural. So now that I'm spiritually awake and not dead in sin, now when I actually open that veil, it's not gonna be nothing, it's gonna be clear. I'm gonna know what it is now. And so I started praying, and I'm just feeling like death encompassed me. And that's what it talks about in Psalm 18, death encompassed me, and that's what it feels like. And I called my wife and I said, she was out with friends at dinner. I said, you need to come get me. She had no idea what I was doing. I wasn't planning this, right?
I can't imagine she would have approved.
Yeah, no, yeah. And she said she doesn't know. And it's starting to get worse as before, like leading up to when she got there, it started to feel like something was pulling, like started to feel like my spirit was wanting to go somewhere. I can't explain it. It's like, it felt like the light was flickering within, like, it was like someone was pulling me somewhere. And so it was like, by the time she gets there, I'm not able to really function at this point. I couldn't breathe well. And so she's trying to talk, like she thinks this is just normal Josh coming in the car, like, hey, why couldn't anyone drive? And I said, I can't talk right now. I said, just pray. I said, just pray for me. I didn't even have time to explain to her what was going on. By this point, I couldn't breathe. It was like and she's even like, she's like, what's wrong? Like, cause I'm like, I'm gasping for breath. And I'm feeling my body like go in and out. It's like I'm here talking to you, and the next thing you know, it's like boom, snapped into like a dream realm. It's like in and out, in and out of consciousness. And then, but it would be a black void. So we're going through this whole car ride, and every now and then I would try to like tell her like, just I can't talk right now. I'm like, over like 30 minutes, I give her the story like, oh, I took mushrooms, all right, And so I get home. By the time I get home, it was just fully on. I run into my room. I lay on the floor, and at this point, I'm just getting pulled. Like I'm feeling my soul just get pulled out of my body. And so I'm in this dark like void. And next thing I know, there starts to be like sight coming to it, because it's just an abyss of blackness. And so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I realize I'm in this giant hand. So I'm in this hand, and then I see demons right in front of me. And it's all the same demons I've seen in that one overdose. It's like I don't know if they were the exact same ones, but they looked the same. It was the
same breed.
Same breed, yeah. And except this time, there was like taller ones. Like it was like they were the ones in charge. Like they were higher ranking ones. So I'm in this hand, and now I'm in another reality. And now fear's like, what is going on? Where am I? What is the first thing that hits you is you're helpless. That's I think the first thing that really got me, even before this happened, like up to this point. It's knowing like who are you gonna call? Like what are you gonna do? What do you know? It's not like when you're a kid you call your mom to help you, and like there's nothing you can do. The hospital can't help you. This is you know what I mean? Like there's nothing you can do right now. So you're just helpless.
Yep.
So I'm in this I'm in this hand, and I'm seeing these demons, and so the one stands up, and then I'm looking like my attention. Once that one stands up, my attention diverts, and now it was like this light tower. Like it was like this thing if it was just tilted up and just lights just with no walls, but you could see it, just a big light beam tower kind of thing with different colors. And I knew that was like the kingdom of heaven, and then I knew that I was in outer darkness of some sort. I was in this in-between place. And so now this demon's stepping forward, and he's presenting a case to this tower. And he said, we're tired of this kid. He keeps coming into our kingdom, taking people out, and then he came back and ate off our table. And it hit me right then and there. You're an evangelist. You're winning souls for Jesus all the time. You really are coming into, and I would. I'd go into wherever, inner cities, wherever, any neighborhood, and just preach Jesus, talk about Jesus, get people saved. You know what I mean?
But you could bring 1,000 people into the church, and you could wind up in the bad place.
100%.
What a phrase. He keeps taking souls out, helping souls out of here, but then he comes and eats from our table. Even Peter Kraft, the theologian, philosopher, he says that abortion is the demonic inversion of the Eucharist. In the Eucharist, the priest holds up the consecrated host and says, recites the word of our Lord, says, "This is my body, which will be given up for you." And what abortion does is uses the same words to a diabolically opposite end, which is, "This is my body. This is my body. And I won't save. I'll kill for my body." Right? It's a total inversion. And even this idea of the Eucharist is manna from heaven. That's what you're seeing, the figure of the Eucharist in the manna that comes down and saves the Israelites, gives them bread to eat. And we now have this in the Holy Communion. And as you said earlier, this idea that, no, man, what if the mushrooms are the act? That's kind of like the manna. But the demons are telling you in this trip, they're saying, that's our food from our table that he's eating.
100%, and that was, I mean, like that was the crux of the whole thing for me. Because at that point, the thing about the spirit realm is you don't need a lot of words to get a lot of revelation, and nothing is spoken. This is all telepathically. It's just known. In the spirit, nothing is hidden. All things nothing is hidden from the light, right? Like so, in the spirit, everything is just it's out on the open. You don't have money to hide behind. You don't have a facade. You don't have your everything that you try to ignore is there, whether you like it or not, and it's seen. And so it was that moment of being naked before everything, of me being a hypocrite in that moment, me backsliding, me whatever I was, everything was there. Oops. Oops. And now it was a matter of I'm in this hand that I can't just get out of this. All right, see you later, guys. It was this is serious. I was in the courts of heaven. I mean, it was literally, they were presenting a case against me to God. And so I'm sitting there now, I'm freaking out in the sense that I already was feeling my body, what was going on. It felt like everything was shriveling up.
Hmm.
It's like you could feel your organs drying up. Fear becomes a jacket, like a living thing that comes around you. Just despair, every negative like emotion, feeling you could think of is there, and then it's heightened. And I felt like a slug if you pour salt on it. I felt my life literally just getting pulled out of me, shriveling up while I'm in this hand. I feel my breath just getting pulled out of me. And mind you, in real time, you feel like you're connected to your physical body. So I'm still like 5-10% aware of what's happening in my body. And every, 10, 15, my wife's freaking out, and during this time, she's freaking out.
Yeah.
She doesn't know what to do. She thinks, should I call hospitals? What should I do? But I know what's going on, so I'm telling her, just pray for me, just keep praying, just like that. I was like, just pray. And then I'd get pulled back into, and I'd be in this reality. And so,
because you're not in physical danger of death any more than any of us is at any given moment. If you were on heroin or something, you would have been in physical danger of death. But as you said consciously, you said, these are mushrooms. Mushrooms at this dose, they're not going to kill you. God tells you, well, I can stop your heart whenever I want.
Right.
But that's different. It's not the mushroom. So, if your wife had said, hey, you're high on heroin or something, and you said, well, don't call the doctors, she probably would have just called the doctors anyway, because this is poison that's going. But what you're saying is, no, my danger right now, though I feel it physically, the danger that I'm in right now is a spiritual danger.
For sure. And I mean, to be honest with you, to this day, I don't know how, like, if it was just spiritually I would have died, or like it felt physical. Like, that's the thing. Physically, my body was not functioning. Like, it felt physical. And the reason I say that is because people get this idea that like I said, like, oh, you can't die from this, you can die from that. There's, this spiritual realm is what is really deciding the physical realm. So it's like, that was a major infraction.
Yeah. The technical language for this is that the matter is just like the stuff that's, and the spiritual realm is the form. It's like our soul is the substantial form of our body.
Right.
And so people try to really neatly separate these two things, but that's not really how it works. You are your soul. You are your body. Those things are together inseparably for now in this world. And so to try to say, well, no, that's just happening to my spirit. It has no effect on my body, or this is just happening to my body. What are you talking about? You're both.
That's like one of the greatest mysteries I'm not gonna get into right now, but that's the mystery of it all, or not even really the mystery, that's the truth behind it, is that's like the spirit world is happening right now while we're sitting here talking. So that's what the first thing it showed me was my body's literally laying there. My soul is literally in the spirit realm. So this is happening right now. So when you see people physically going through something, you don't know what is happening spiritually a lot of times, right? So anyways, this is happening. So I'm feeling this whole thing going on in my body. I'm literally losing breath. I'm crying out for God to have mercy, but I'm thinking at this point, like, God heard me by now. Like either he forgives me or he doesn't. So I'm kind of like, I started to give up because it was exhausting me. It was physically it was giving me, like, it was taking all my strength to speak, to say, God have mercy, forgive me. I just felt the longer I was in his hand, the more life was getting pulled out of me. And at one point I started to give up. I said, you know what, Jesus, forgive me. I made a big mistake. I'm a sinner. I believe in you for my salvation. I said, I'm letting go. Like, I'm gonna give up. I'm done fighting this thing right now. And so I started to relax. And I started to, but I'm still going through turmoil. But I started to think about, my wife was pregnant at the time. I have another kid. I started to think about that. And I said, no, I can't. I said, God, you know what? It's not about me. I said, my kid needs me. And so that hit me. That was the next thing that happened was, oh, these people need me. So I said, God, just save me for them, and so at that moment, I started to feel almost a slight like pressure release. And then I started to notice that at the top of the tower, like, it was like, I couldn't look at it. I knew, it's the glory of God was up there. I couldn't go look at it. I knew it was there, but I could see the rest of the tower. And I could see that the source of that tower was at the top of it, that was giving life to the rest of it. And all of a sudden, breath started coming. Like, I could see like a little like breath would hit me, and then I'd feel it hit me and be like, And then in that moment, I said, every breath that I get he's literally giving it to me. He's aware that he's giving it to me, consciously giving it to me. And it was like I would get the breath, and I would make it last, because it was like there was space in between. It wasn't like I could just, like how we could breathe now, just as freely as we want. I couldn't breathe freely. I was breathing according to
And it's a beautiful metaphor. And of course, as we're speaking here,
mm-hmm.
there's really no such thing as a metaphor or literal. I mean, what we're saying is these two things intersect,
Right.
physical and the metaphysical, and that you say you couldn't breathe, and then God gives you that breath, and this is the image of that is what the Holy Spirit is, right? I mean, the bond of love between the Father and the Son, and this procession of breath, which
it
is
says, yeah, Psalm 33. That's what it literally says. It says he spoke everything into existence, and then it says his breath made man breathe, like, and gave the being the hosts. I'm now witnessing this.
even receive the Holy Spirit. Christ says, right? Breathes on them. Receive the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's so now I'm sitting with that, but it's like I start to get hope, because I didn't have hope at that point. Like I was just kind of I didn't know what to think. It was just I was just in pain and confusion, but also like just discomfort. So now I start to feel like maybe there's hope now. And so now the breath starts coming more fluidly, and I'm starting to like kind of ease up. And then all of a sudden, it was like this cloud of witnesses kind of came around me, right? And the Bible talks about that. So these saints start coming out, and I knew they were praying for me. I just started to feel energy, love come from them. And as they began to pray for me, I started to feel more alive. And then all of a sudden, it was like a shadow of a cross came out the top of the tower. It was like a cross came out, and it was like the source of the top, his attention turned to it. And it was this, because like I said, everything's telepathically, and like it's all connected. Like you know what everything is kind of feeling and thinking in a sense. So it's like I could feel God's attention turn to the cross and remember. And then all of a sudden I look over, and out of the tower, Jesus starts walking out. I see this man come walking towards me, out into the center of this abyss. He puts his arm around me. He looks at everything, all the demons. He puts his arm around me. He said, "This one's mine. He belongs to me." And as soon as he touched me, I went back to my body and began going through deliverance. Because Jesus can't touch you. And so everything that I had just allowed into my life, I literally was puking. Like, I never had a painful vomit like that. I was puking my guts out, filling up garbage bags, little like shopping bags.
Which is common. I mean, this is people, maybe not as intensely as what you're describing, but people always talk about this really spiritual experience of ayahuasca. They all vomit a bunch. And you think, that doesn't seem so beautiful. Yeah. And even the beauty of that image, though, where Christ walks out and touches you, and you're back in the body, which is, it's an incarnational faith. The pivot of history is the incarnation of the second person of the Trinity, the Son of God, into flesh. And he was incarnate of the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, and becomes man. And the fact that God, the Son, becomes man is this height, this perfection of the unity of physical and metaphysical. You think, no, the body actually does matter. We actually are these things. And you see this in the sacraments that he gives us. So this bread is my body. Yeah. How do you make sense of that? It only makes sense in an incarnational faith. So the second he touches you, oh yeah, there's the body again. Oh, right. Oh, there I am.
That's you gave me a piece of it, because the funny thing about this story is there's so much that I'm still piecing. Probably the rest of my life I'll be piecing together parts of it. And so I go through deliverance. I collapse. I puke my guts out. I think it's over, because I collapse. I feel kind of that release of like it's gonna be okay, and I collapse. But now when I collapse on the floor, I go back. But this time I'm in that tower. And when I'm in the tower, now I'm in the light. I know the darkness is behind me. I'm looking at Jesus face to face, and it's like you don't see everything else. It's like everything else fades away like a cinematic, on your iPhone. All I could see was his eyes, and his eyes were like like almost like the earth. Like they were multiple colors. It wasn't just like, oh, they're blue or brown. It was like there was shades of green, there was shades of blue. It was just like they magnetically like pull you into him. And then it also simultaneously pulls itself into you. It's like this. So everything's just fading away, and it's just he's staring in my eyes. He smiles at me, and so he's smiling at me as if he's happy to see me. I'm thinking about what just happened, but he's looking at me as if like he was happy to see me. And he said, maybe we shouldn't do that again. And he smiled at me like, I love you. And so in that moment,
Oh man.
it's like, what do you do with that? In the moment, I'm receiving that, but I'm still stuck in what happened in the past. But I'm also now, scripture is flooding my mind. I'm thinking about Psalm 73, for whom do I have in heaven but besides you? Who do I desire on earth? Like literally, Jesus is all we have in heaven. That like it's because of him, it's him alone. Like we have nothing else on our side. There's nothing else in earth. Like he's it. And so that's hitting me like, oh, you're the one that came for me. No one else. There was no one else that could have came for me. It was you.
Yeah. The saints are praying for you,
right?
But he comes for you.
Yeah, but it's through him.
Yeah.
So it was like, yeah, like, and so that's all hitting me. And so he like starts like walking with me. But I started to notice, because I'm looking around, and it wasn't like I was seeing everything as clear as I'm seeing this room. It was almost like there was a sheet over it. So everything was kind of veiled, but I could see it. So I could make out, oh, this is this kind of color. Oh, there's a being there. So I'm seeing light beings kind of, and I'm seeing that there's stuff around, there's life around. But I'm sensing that things like that, these like angels or these saints, whatever they were kind of disappointed in me. Not mad at me, but it was kind of just like, you knew better, Josh, like kind of thing. Like, and it wasn't a shaming way. It was just like,
it's just what it is.
It just is what it was. It was just kind of like.
That's wild. I guess it shouldn't be wild that you describe it that way, because this is the scene in Dante's Divine Comedy, in Paradise. Something I'm always struck by when I love the poem, and when Dante gets up to heaven, he has wonderful conversations with these people, one of his ancestors, saints, and the object of his love, well, the ultimate object of his love is God, but he is sort of channeling it through this beloved Beatrice. Mm-hmm. And Beatrice sends Virgil down on this mission to, go pull Dante out of his midlife crisis and the wayward way and pull him down through the pits of hell, up through purgatory, up into heaven. But she's not nice to him. Mm-hmm. The first thing she says to him when she sees him at the end of purgatory going into heaven is she says, he's crying because Virgil goes away. And Virgil's a pagan, can't go to heaven. And she says, stop crying. Non piangere ancora. Mm. Cut it out. We got to go. And then she goes up, and she's fairly steely-faced in heaven. Yeah. And she's looking at God. Mm-hmm. And he can see in the reflection of her eyes. That's how he's looking at her eyes, and he's seeing God reflected there. But she's not saying, oh, hey, buddy, good to see you. Oh, attaboy. She's saying, no, reality is what reality is. And I'm not going to, I'll pray for you, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you.
And that's what I think it is. Like, we get sometimes this idea that like angels in heaven and Jesus is like this teddy bear, like, oh, and it's like, they're serious. Jesus was about his Father's business. This is like a serious, God's about his will being done. Yeah. So it's like, this isn't a game, It's like why are we referred to as armies and sports players and, and soldiers and
church
stuff?
militant.
Right, and so that was very clear to me. And so with that, I couldn't accept it. Like, shame just hit me all of a sudden, and I took off. Like, it's like I took off. Where I was at, there was levels to it. There was different like dimensions of glory. Where he brought me was a higher one. I knew there was one or two above me, and I knew there was at least 3 or 4 under me. So when I looked down, I said, I'm going to the lowest part of heaven I could find. As low as I can, I want to stay here.
Good strategy. It's good advice and good strategy.
Yeah, so I took off. I mean, like, you think it and you just travel. You go, you're there. So next thing I know, I'm at the ground and I'm on my knees and I'm just worshiping. I didn't want to look at anything. I said, God, don't make me speak ever again. I'm not worthy to speak. I said, all I want to do is worship. I said, just let me worship. And so that was like the next thing that 100% hit me of, you're giving me this breath. The only thing that I should do with it is give it back to you in a way that pleases you. So it's like, I don't really want to, like, just let me worship. That's the only heart response to what's going on right now, and to where this realizing where I'm at. I shouldn't be here. But then Jesus came down and he comforted me. You know, it was like this just moment of let it go. Like, just, you're here, embrace it. So I started to ascend back with him, and then it was like I switched. I wasn't with him anymore. I was in this almost this bubble of like, just like colors was like flying by me, and it was like downloads were just flooding through me. I felt like I was hooked up to a machine. You see people like hooked up to those machines, or like that's what it felt like. I felt like I was hooked up to this machine, and every question I had was just flooding through me, to the point where I said, "Stop! You're gonna kill me." It was like God's love and His wrath, His grace, and everything was all mixed in one almost. It was like this: you're being just too good to me. I don't deserve it. It was like all, everything I want to know is coming to me. Everything I could ever think about in my life and wanting to understand is coming to me. I'm getting all that. It's just flooding me. It's just hitting all simultaneously. In a matter of minutes, it's like download. Everything made sense. And I literally was crying out to stop. I said, "Stop showing me this. Stop showing me this. It's gonna kill me. It's gonna kill me. It's gonna kill me." And then next thing I know, it started like lightening up, and then I'm back in my body. And it was just like, it's over. Like, but I didn't really want it to be, like, over now, because now I'm like, it was like, all right.
Well, you see this same experience that you're describing when God's face passes by in Genesis. Say, don't look directly. You can't. You will die if you look directly at the face of God. Like, you can look at the back of His head. You can, but this sense that you'll be overwhelmed because you're finite.
Yeah.
And so you can't comprehend God. It is not. That's not going to work.
Yeah. It's like
if He were totally comprehensible by you, He wouldn't be God, and you wouldn't be you.
Right. No, I mean, it reminded me of like when Paul said, "There's things I've seen I can't tell you."
Yeah.
It's like,
and I see through a veil half darkly.
Yeah.
As you're describing this veil, right?
It was too much for my natural body to contain. And you know what? You reminded me of something when you were talking about Dante's Inferno, and I haven't talked about this really yet, but what it was, because I was baptized Russian Orthodox, which is, I think, very similar to Catholic faith. And somebody asked me, they're like, "Have you heard of the toll houses?" And so when I started looking into toll houses, I was like, I really feel like that's what I experienced, and I didn't get this till after, but I think it's similar to like purgatory. And that's what. So I've been looking
into toll houses. So
houses.
like you won't get out until you pay the very last farthing, that sort of thing.
That's kind of how it felt. I don't know. I just, when I read about what toll houses are, I'm like, that's definitely what it seemed like I was going through. That's definitely what it felt like. Because there was a period of hell. It was a form of hell, not the fullness of it.
Even the description that you have of the trial, that you're in. We're all in trials. That's what.
Yeah.
Jesus is led by the Spirit into the desert to be tested into a trial. Lead me not into a trial. Lead me not to temptation, but deliver me from evil. So you come to. Your wife is there. Then what? How's the story end? I guess the story's still going on.
And she's freaked out. Like, basically, like, she doesn't really know what to think. My wife didn't grow up in that world. So she doesn't see this. She doesn't, she's just taking my word for it to just, like, calm down, relax, it's gonna be okay, pray, whatever. Like, so she's just kind of like, "Oh, I'm glad it's over." I mean, what do you really say after that? It's not like there was a significant, like, reaction. She was just freaked out. And she's like, "That was scary." And to this day, like, when this thing comes up, she's like, "Yeah, that was scary." And she'll say that. And then I laid in bed and I was scared to move. For the rest of the night, I stayed awake saying hallelujah, hallelujah. And for the next 3 days, I didn't want to talk. I was scared to talk. I mean, that's what the fear of God will do. I mean, the fear of God got so deeply drilled into me, and not, I'm scared of God, the acknowledgement of His holiness.
Wonder and awe, right? Servile fear is different than holy. The holy fear is that.
Exactly. And so that was the main takeaway from it. Like, God really is that holy. And that's so, like, that ties into this whole, you're your own God, you're your own divine. Right. It's like,
because that's what it all my friends who have gotten sucked into this stuff, whether we're talking about chemical or just spiritual, or usually it's some kind of combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
And it always seems to come down to, you're your own God and you can do whatever you want. You've got the power, and you. And like, if it's about you,
Yep.
you're probably not on the right path, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think and that's the I think the big like difference to me is that God wants to create with us, and Jesus is the center of everything. These whole other movements, they take everything that God intended for us to have, and not everything, but some things, and they just kick Jesus out of it. So, and it reminds me of that parable where the guys said, I'm gonna send my helper to the vineyard to get my fruit. They beat him up, beat him up. I'll send my son. They said, oh, we'll kill him so we can inherit what belongs to him. That's literally what Satan has done. He's perverted everything that God has, took it for himself, and then made people afraid of certain things that God had created for people, and he kicked Jesus out of it. So it's like, everything's gotten perverted.
I love the image of the cross as the axle on which the world turns, on which the universe turns. That's where it all turns around. And you can deny that, but if you deny that, you're going to find yourself increasingly incoherent.
Mm-hmm.
And you can try to make a god of yourself. That's the primal temptation in the Garden of Eden, is you shall be as gods. But you're not going to end up as a god. You're going to end up destroyed, physically and spiritually.
Absolutely.
It's not going to work out.
No, it's not. It's not. And so, yeah, that's just the.
And that's that.
That's that. Yeah, that's that story. So,
Josh,
yeah.
It's an amazing story.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's a hell of a story, but it's not. A lot of it was a hell of a story.
Yeah.
But it's got a happy ending. Ends like a comedy.
Yeah. It's good.
Doesn't it all? Doesn't it all have a happy ending?
I hope for most of us, I think it, but I think that's what I gathered.
Yeah.
The happy ending might not be guaranteed.
Well, we're just talking right now during Lent, and the Easter exclamation that people make is, "Oh, happy fault."
Mm-hmm.
In the Garden of Eden, the fall of sin that destroyed perfection. Oh, happy fault that won for us so great, so glorious a Redeemer. That's what you say on Easter, because you say, all right, so look at that. There was all this terrible stuff that happened, but God can turn that even for good.
For good.
And then all we have to do is cooperate with God's grace. See, that should be this easy part.
Yeah.
Even time and time again, 5 overdoses.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. No.
Multiple.
I mean, it's. I know I'm just a vessel of mercy. That's the point this has brought me to. I know that I'm only here because of God and God alone. I'm aware of that too. And so now really the only thing I could do is try to just submit to His will and His grace as much as I can. And stay in that lane. And so.
Thank you for coming in, Josh.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Where can people find you?
So I have an Instagram, Joshua_Kingdom Priest. And I have a TikTok, the same thing. And I have a YouTube, just my name, Joshua Zatkoff. And so, yeah.
I'm Michael Knowles. We'll see you next time, right here.